We've got Tom from Wargaming, who is going to come and talk to us. So, Tom, I think you're online. Is that right? Yes, here we go. So Tom will join us shortly. Knowing the Dschermans. I have no idea how to pronounce that. I do apologize. I cannot wait to see what it's about, though. So, Tom, over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. So, hello, everybody. My name is Tom Putzki, and I'm with Wargaming since more than 9 years, in the games industry since 25 plus years. And to be frankly honest, this is something very interesting for me at the moment. I love to talk on stages, directly interacting with the audience and running around and walking around. And right now I have the situation sitting here in my home office in Berlin. So by the way, best greetings from Berlin, everybody. And have a nice talk about knowing the Germans. An in-deep talk about a complicated topic, to put it like this, within 20 minutes. So let's get started. It's always time for a challenge. So what to expect today? First of all, some information about Germany as one of the top 5 global video game markets. Short, of course. Why is Germany so different? An overview, history-wise, and today. Problems we are facing in Germany and why. Some examples. And as I don't want to leave you out with all this negativity stuff, there is a slide where it's getting a little bit better, and hopefully I still have some time with Q&A. Okay, the first minute of my talk is done, and I made it in 1 minute, which is pretty good, because actually on talks in normal lifetime, I need at least 10 to 15 minutes to introduce myself. Well, this went good. So, German games market. Just short overview. As you can see, we have top 5 countries: China, United States, Japan, Korea, South Korea, and then Germany. We're talking about a games market of approximately $6 billion revenue a year. And here are some demographics from this market. Approximately 34 million Germans are playing video games. The total number of our population is a little bit more than 82 million. The average age of player is rising, as you can see here on the right side, from 2016, 35 years average, to 2019, 36.4, and 2020, 37.5 years. The gender is 48% of the gamers are women, 52% of the gamers are male. So nearly half of the player base is female. This is helpful for the whole games market. It's, from experience, not very helpful regarding wargaming and its products. We are doing stuff with tanks and ships and warplanes. This is not very helpful regarding female audience. Last slide with numbers. Promised market growth in German games market from 2018, 2019, plus 6%. And here on the right side, you have a slight idea. Subscription fees, online services, games in sales, retail and digital. It's more than 1 billion euro. In-game purchases growing big time, 2.254 billion euro. And last but not least, gaming hardware with way more than 2.3 billion euro. Okay, and promised, this is the last slide with numbers. And now let's get a little bit deeper into the German behavior regarding video games. So we have the situation, or maybe you all have heard it a little bit already. Germany is different regarding video games, meaning, first of all, age rating. We have huge problems with violence. We don't have any problem with sexual explicit content in video games, definitely not. But with violence, we had this, just as an example, oil instead of blood for Command and Conquer, because the little soldiers were all considered as robots. We had shooter ads from first-person shooter developers, and they put a label on it, banned in Germany. We had more than 1 decade the killer games debate here in Germany regarding first-person shooters. And of course, we had huge problems with any kinds of Nazi symbols like SS runes, swastikas, and likewise. Germany is different because of something else as well. Long time, Germany was a PC-driven market, meaning PC games. The problem for German game development, for example, was that the PC market was so big and so convenient that the first generation of developers missed consoles completely and didn't catch up so far, and are still struggling to catch up, especially in development for consoles. Germany is different for another reason. Typical German genres, gaming genres, are simulations of all kinds. Name anything, we have a simulation for it. Especially economic-driven simulations started with animated Excel sheets and likewise. And of course, the typical building up strategy titles like Settlers or Anno series or. These are typical German games. Why? And last but not least, games in Germany were long time not considered as culture at all. Culture is something we in Germany, I'm talking about the public opinion and the opinion leaders, are thinking of Beethoven, Bach, Brahms, Goethe, and so on and so on. And now let's get a little bit into this, and I give you a short history lesson why, in my personal opinion, these things are a little bit different in Germany. And of course, oh, I've forgotten about the quote. This is the only quote I want to bother you with. Also a promise, but I found this very appealing. A quote from the German weekly political magazine Die Zeit, and it is, "No other product after 1945 has contributed as much to renewing the image of the Germans as the automobile. German cars, not German tanks, roll on the roads of the world today," which I think is better, because tanks don't belong on the roads, they belong on the screen. Today, car manufacturers are paying careful attention to avoiding all militaristic connotations, all possible associations with the Nazi era. And imagine that the car manufacturer Porsche built the Tiger tank. A German SUV must feel like a tank, but it must not look like one. Okay, and now we go on a little bit. Germany is different. It started, or my short history starts 1945 with the downfall. End of World War II in Europe, 8th and 9th of May, 1945. Left picture shows Soviet soldiers raising the Soviet Union flag on German Reichstag, and the other picture shows the old town of Dresden. So this is how the younger German history started, down on the ground. Next, starting again, the so-called Trümmerfrauen, we even have a German word for this, literally translated with rubble women, started cleaning up the mess and building up the country after 1945. We even have some monuments for these ladies in a couple of German cities, especially monuments for the Trümmerfrauen. Why it was women? Well, the men were prisoner of war or dead at this time. Then the next big step was the airlift of Berlin in 1948 till 1949. It was more than 11 months when Berlin was shut down and all roads, ship lanes and and railroads were blocked by the Soviet Union, and Berlin was completely supplied via airlift. And this was the first time Germans saw that the occupants, as most of the Germans saw it directly after the war, were helpful and helped German people survive and changed from hostile soldiers to supporters and friends. Germany is different. We have the so-called Wirtschaftswunder, economic miracle in the 1950s. On the left, you see our Minister for Economic Affairs for long years and later Chancellor of Germany, Ludwig Erhard, with his book, Prosperity for All. And on the right, you see the celebration in the Volkswagen factory for the 1 millionth Beetle. So in the 50s, Germany was definitely busy with building up the country, with bringing prosperity for all, grabbing a piece of luck for everybody. And people were working very hard. You may all have know the cliches about Germans, like working hard, being punctual, disciplined, good engineers, and so on and so on. And this comes from this area, but also from this era comes something which is directly linked to the problems in the video games industry. You have to work. You have to work a lot, and gaming of all kind is something considered for kids, because grown-ups definitely have other things to do. And if they have spare time, it's better they do something useful with their spare time, like sports, like learning, educating, and so on. But gaming is definitely something for kids. We have the division of Germany for a long time. Here you can see US Army Checkpoint Charlie, where Soviet tanks in the background and US tanks in the front were facing each other like a stare-off. And for a long time, for a couple of decades, Germany was directly the point between two worlds, between Warsaw Pact and the NATO, between East and West, and was literally in the center of the Iron Curtain. And the Berlin Wall, directly, because I love this picture, last man fleeing from before the wall was literally built. 1968, the student movement started, and this was something different and new for Germany, because this was the first time young people didn't want to listen and obey without responding to the authorities anymore. This was something new. Germans are disciplined, as I said, and Germans love to obey, like we all saw in the Nazi area or in the emperor's area from First World War, and likewise. And this was a big change. This was the first time Germans started to disobey. This went on in the 80s, the peace movement in the peak time of the Cold War, where literally hundreds of thousands of Germans went on the streets to protest against rockets, against armies, against soldiers, against everything related to war, to weapons, and so on and so on. And this was really an exciting and astonishing time. And yeah, this left picture is from the Bonner Hofgarten, where the biggest demonstration of the peace movement had more than 360,000 people attending one interesting Saturday afternoon. And then what we all have in mind is the wall goes down in 1989, Berlin Wall breaks, and 1 year later, Germany reunited and celebrating and so on. So these were my short steps through the closer German history. And what does this all have to say and what does it all have to do? Okay, there is something I wanted to show you as well. The left pic shows kindergarten kids with their teachers, and the right pic shows elementary school kids with their teachers. And it took me a while to pick out, here on the right side, there are 2 male teachers, 2 out of, in total, I think 17. And here on the left side, there are absolutely no male teachers in the kindergarten. I'm pretty sure this is the same in other countries as well, but this is especially in Germany, meaning, for example, that German kids don't get in touch with male teachers until the age of, say, 10 or 12. And to be frankly honest, for games that we have, for example, World of Tanks, World of Warships, and the likewise, we can pretty much guess that female teachers won't be telling the kids that tanks is something nice to play with. What problems do we face, or did we face here in Germany? So first of all, regarding video games. Video games were, as I already told you, long time considered as for kids only. Germany, as an example, was discussing the killer games debate for more than 1 decade. Things have become a little bit better, but this whole speech or this whole lecture is all about where does this all come from. The company name of Wargaming was creating some problems. Wargaming is in German ears not just one gaming genre among others. It's translated as Kriegsspiele, and this is bad because war is bad. And this is really implemented in German thinking, German culture, German structure nowadays, especially public opinion. World War II, well, you can guess that Germany is very cautious regarding all kinds of World War II content, and of course, Nazi symbols. Tanks, this is directly affecting, once more, wargaming. Tanks are not seen as man toys or highlights of the engineering. Tanks are weapons of war and destruction. And last but not least, the origin of wargaming is Belarus. Belarus, or White Russia, is considered to be the last official dictatorship in Europe. And if you know our history, you know we have some experience with dictators. So this is something that we had problems with in Germany for a long time. Examples for this problem: when we rented office space, both Wargaming Europe and Wargaming Mobile were rejected by landlords to rent office space from them because of the company name. Hey, we want to give you our money. We want to have nice office for, say, 10, and in case of Wargaming Mobile, 70, 80 people. Well, yeah, that's very cool. That's good. What's your company's name? Wargaming. Oh no, you won't get any space from me. The band Rammstein, most likely known to all of you, was planned as a cooperation partner for the launch of our air game World of Warplanes. And we had a perfect launch trailer, directly cut it on the song Feuer frei by Rammstein. And it was really nice, but the band itself refused after the record company and the management of Rammstein agreed on working and cooperating together with us. The band itself refused to do this because we are wargaming and dealing with tanks. German Federal Armed Forces refused to cooperate with us because we do video games, we are named Wargaming, and this is not cool for the army. We had an advertising on Gamescom 2011. We had some World of Tanks motifs on trams in Cologne. We received a shitstorm at Gamescom due to our branding of these trams. And last but not least, a couple of years ago, we released the title Master of Orion. And we wanted to have a launch event here in Berlin, in the Berlin Observatory. But they refused to host our Master of Orion launch event at their place. Why? Because the name of the company is Wargaming. Well, but as I promised you in the beginning, things are getting slowly, but a little better. As you can see, our Chancellor, Angela Merkel, opened up Gamescom 2017. And here you can see her with a gamepad in her hands, of course, playing a farming simulation. And here you can see her at the Gamescom with her Minecraft avatar. And the German government started to approve high fundings for German game development, which never ever has happened before. But now we have a 5 years program. But to be frankly honest, at the moment is very, very slow, and it's not really doing good. I hope this funding will do much better once everybody gets used to it. And last but not least, things have changed regarding one other thing as well. Games as a memory culture, I've called this slide, and this is just as an example I want to show you. It's a game called Through the Darkest of Times from a German Berlinian game developer called Paint Bucket Games. And it's a strategy games of leading and making them survive a resistant group in Nazi Germany, in Nazi Berlin. And this is the first game where officially swastikas were allowed and legal in video games, as this screenshots show. And it was a long struggle. It's not about we definitely need swastikas, but it's just about the cultural thing that swastikas are allowed in movies and on TV and in graphic novels, but long time, long decades, not in video games. But this finally stopped. And as my timer already rang, I'm ready for a Q&A.
We have a couple of minutes for a couple of questions. So, I mean, I think what you're really showing for me is just how important it is to understand deeply the cultural consequences of history and the context in which people are sitting. And I think, Germany is a fantastic example for that because of so much, rich, deep elements of history that have happened in the last, in my lifetime, in the last 50 years, let alone beyond that.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the questions that came up here is this: in a world, games have constantly had problems, being pointed out as guilty for a lot of incidents and issues. Do you think that the issues found in Germany can be drawn as a parallel to what's been happening in other parts of the world?
I'm pretty sure, yes. But let's say the problems started in Germany, I think, a little bit more early than in other countries, because I used to bring other countries as an example how the video games industry is there literally without any bigger problems. It started later than in Germany. And yeah, but as you can see, as I mentioned, violence in video games is a big, huge topic, long time in Germany. And it only started a couple of years ago in, for example, the US. So yeah, maybe in this case, Germany was leading the way.
Yeah, and I think also it's such a much more sensitive issue in Germany than particularly violence. But I think we've actually, seen a lot more happening in this space. When we saw the World Health Organization, I think incorrectly stating that there was a specific element called gaming disorder, when we appreciate that there are issues of behavioral addiction and games can be a vehicle for something that's behavioral addiction. But it's quite damaging when you see a subset of the scientific community blaming games when the majority seem to think that there's a separate issue that's not related to gameplay.
Yep.
So I think to me there's a kind of like a dichotomy there where we still seem to be, even though violence itself seems to have gone off the radar to a large extent, mostly because the data is overwhelmingly stating there is no correlation.
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, are you seeing an improvement in terms of people's perception of violent video games as an outlet rather than as a bad thing?
Yeah, there has been an improvement, and things changed in the last couple of years. But as I'm trying to work for the German video games industry, not only with the company I'm with, but also in the organization Game, and likewise, I accompany this for more than 20 years now, and it's a long struggle. Sometimes you achieve something, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, there comes a new election, and completely different politicians are in charge and everything, and you have to start from scratch, everything all over again. So if you deal with politics, with public opinion, you need to have a very long breath.
Absolutely, and I think every medium has had its experiences. We only have to read novels like Fahrenheit 451 to understand that there is never an easy ride for any medium. Someone will use it as an excuse to blame and to kind of charge people. I really would love to ask the next question, which is about German government opening for game development. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to quickly ask it. So, although German government is opening for game development companies in the country, these limitations and shaming culture related to war, does that still continue?
The last part of the question, please.
So we see the German government opening out and supporting game development. Are they limiting that against war-based content?
Yes, they are limiting it a little bit. There is a so-called culture test. Each game that is submitted to this must pass, and you can have war-related games, but there is a big but. It's too in deep to really stretch out all the rules and regulation, but there are rules and regulations.
Sounds good. Well, not sounds good, but sounds informative. On that note, I'm going to have to say thank you very much.